It is worrying indeed when any publication has to close down. So it is really getting tough from the point of view of lack of sufficient readership to the issue of social media.
How influential is the media still? Twitter, Facebook are influencing people far more than mainstream newspapers nowadays.
The media has greater responsibility compared to Twitter. The media itself is governed by certain codes and it must abide by those codes.
Threatened, attacked and killed, journalists are also being imprisoned in record numbers around the world.
If you mention and name particular journalists, you actually put them at risk.
We were media activists, and I believe we still are today. A journalist is an endangered species today.
Watch Media Monitor Sundays at 9 a.m.
We are at the forefront of Africa's tech discussion.
We're already planning for the 5G spectrum to be licensed by 2020.
In Mauritius, for fiber migration, we had a strategy. On network, we have gadgets, robots, and more.
We focus on investing in entrepreneurs and technology in emerging markets.
There's technology and social media news on Network with me, Pumelele Zondi, every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. and every Sunday at 5:30 p.m.
Hey, it's Reno Race. Would you like to renovate a room in your house? Then don't despair, because Metonoya, Tina and their team of helpers are on the rescue. There'll be some silliness and a lot of running. But most importantly, it's out with the old and in with the new. Joy! Reno Race, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. only on SABC 1. Zanzi for sure.
And welcome back. Now, the National Consumer Commission has been investigating the matter concerning the Ford Motor Company and, of course, the inquest that is now being set down into the death of Rishal Jimmy. And the Consumer Commission also charged with this. And even though they aren't at liberty to actually discuss the details of the case due to legal process between them and the Ford Motor Company, they join us now to talk more about how consumers can actually ensure that the Consumer Protection Act works in their favor, to their advantage in instances such as these. And we're joined by Deputy Commissioner Tezi Mabuza in studio with us this morning. Thanks so much for coming through.
Morning, Sakina, and thanks for the opportunity.
So I know we can't get into the finer details of this particular issue regarding the Ford Motor Company and this particular case, but it is one that had captured the imagination of the South African public, and it's brought, streaming back now with this inquest that is set to take place next month. But as far as, consumer protection goes, what does the Act say in terms of, one, buying a vehicle and how you are protected in that regard?
Sakina, the issue about vehicles, and especially the case in point, though we are not going to really talk about it in particular. But what I can say is that the first instances is that when a consumer actually transacts, the Consumer Protection Act is there to give them redress. So the first win for us as the Commission is to ensure that your economic interest is protected. In these instances, whenever we have a violation of any of the provision of our acts, the first thing that we go to is to ensure that when you have bought a vehicle, the first thing is, are you then being put in a place where you would have been, would you not have transacted before? That would mean that if you purchase a vehicle and it is defective, the first thing that we want to get as the Commission is to ensure that either the vehicle is being repaired, you are being refunded, or maybe in this case, you would find that in instances wherein now the supplier would be saying that either in terms of the defect in the vehicle, then if you don't get the redress, is wherein we come in and say that is a violation. But now I think we have to unpack it slightly and say that the first thing is that when there is, in the supplier side, there is consumer protection. The first thing is that we ensure that a consumer is protected from hazard in terms of their personal health and safety. And that is done through the quality infrastructure. That's why you have people like your national regulator for compulsory specifications, you have the conformity standards that come in with all the standards that relate to a motor vehicle. Could it be your wheel? Could it be your airbags and all that? If those standards are there from the manufacturer side and quality is assured, then the first side in the supplier side of you being safe then is ensured. But then sometimes you'll find that within the production line things go wrong. And if they do go wrong, then there is the second part in the demand side that would ensure that in that case we will either, when we see that it's a systemic issue, then we will recall that product and say fix this and fix that and fix that. But then within that process, even if your vehicle will be fixed, or then in this instance you will be refunded, there is what we call a residual practice by the supplier. If constantly they will ensure that they put vehicles that are unsafe, either for you as a consumer or for the general public, and in that case is then that even if you would have received your vehicle, will then go after the supplier and say, but you had to ensure in the beginning that there is quality good, there is safety, and the entire environment is protected. Then that becomes prohibited conduct, because the supplier, by their action, they would have now provided unsafe and goods of poor quality. So that is the issue. But then what is really important is how do you then as a consumer do? Because the issue of now that we get amongst us as South Africans is that we'll complain, go on social media and all that, but there is no, in most cases you would find that there is no direct complaint wherein somebody will say instantly when something happens, like the first time when I pick it up, I go and complain directly to the supplier, because that's the first area where in now you have to raise your concern and say, I'm not happy about A, B, and C. We all have the 6 months implied warranty. And the Act doesn't actually differentiate whether the vehicle is new or it's used. The 6 months apply to any other vehicle that you buy in the market. So if defects present themselves in the first 6 months, you are at liberty to go back to the supplier and say, this and this and this is not in order. I would expect the vehicle to be actually off a usable, in a usable condition that I can drive it.
Now, you say that, we're very lax when it comes to actually taking that step and complaining as South Africans, but how extensive were the complaints to the Commission with regard to the Ford Kuga vehicles after this particular instance?
I would say that in this particular instance, we never even heard about that until it was on the news. And one of our staff, because what would normally do, our media liaison office and some of the officials within the commission, they would actually look at the media and see what is trending. And then we picked it up to say that there is this particular complaint and all that. When we pick up certain things, would actually either even with our recalls, we'll pick them up on the media, or maybe with some of the suppliers or some of the regulators overseas, we would actually alert one another and say, this is happening and this has happened in my country. And then we'd look into social media and say, is it happening in South Africa? And based on that is then that we started engaging with the particular company. And then in this instance, we also have another incident, I think, around one of the suppliers as well, wherein we've picked up on the media that people are complaining and all that. And we simply get a letter that says that as consumers of this particular brand, we are unhappy about A, B, and C. But there's no direct complaint. There's no direct complaint to say that I, as Tezi, bought this vehicle on this particular day and this happened. So it becomes kind of like a general kind of like complaints that are wishy-washy over there about a particular brand, but you don't get people behind a complaint.
So are you saying that even post all of this, you still didn't receive any direct complaints to the Commission?
No, Sakina, on this matter, after we started engaging and then we had actually instituted a recall, is then that we had received complaint. It was actually after the recall, not even before the recall. So,
okay.
Yes.
Well, we're practically out of time, but I just have to ask, because we did invite the Ford Motor Company to join us for this interview, which they declined. But how cooperative have they been with the Commission as far as this goes?
those?
Sakina, they have been very cooperative. We have finalized our investigation with them. Because it's an investigation report, we had to place before them and say, this is what we see as alleged prohibited conduct. We are engaging, we are finding ground in relations to them actually redressing on some of the matters, but the issue is that residue that we are talking about of the prohibited conduct. So that is what we are settling right now. And once that is done, is then that we would now go to the tribunal and say, we've agreed on this, we disagree on this, and then for the arbitration to take place.
Well, thank you so much to the Deputy Commissioner of the National Consumer Commission, Ms. Tezi Mabuza, for discussing this particular matter with us as far as consumer rights go. And we're focusing on the Ford Kuga instance, and we'll be speaking to the sister of Rishal Jimmy, who unfortunately lost his life when his Ford Kuga caught alight. So we'll do that after this break.